He is 63 years old, and his surgically repaired heart has healed from the trauma of triple bypass surgery. The simple pleasures, like feeding the family dog, are among the many joys in this man's life, yet his is not a typical existence. For at an age when many are retired and strapped to a rocking chair, this man is on the road, strapping himself into a jet-powered tractor, preparing to unleash 6,000 pounds of horsepower and fury on dirt tracks across the country. The helmet says Art. The face says Arfons. The name says Motorsports. Art Arfons, owner and caretaker of the famed Green Monster pulling and racing machines. Vehicles which have blazed a trail of red-hot excitement spanning 4 decades. Pulling machines like this one. Dragsters which roar to record times. And unusual-looking rocket ships which blasted through the salt flats of Bonneville to new world land speed records. 37 years after he first climbed behind the wheel of a modified racing machine, he's still at it. Still competing in truck and tractor pulls on weekends. Still spending long hours in his shop, building and designing racing machines that do the unheard of, the impossible. And yes, at the age of 63, still dreaming of yet another assault on the world land speed record. Hi, everybody. I'm Ken Broo, and this is my partner, Mike Galloway. And in the next half hour, we're going to talk with and about one of the all-time legends in tractor pulling, the great Art Arfons. And Mike probably knows him better than anyone else.
First time I ever saw him was in 1958 at a drag race in Oklahoma City. He was an innovator in drag racing. He was an innovator when he attempted to set a world's land speed record, and he's still a big innovator in the truck and tractor pull world. He's ahead of the competition, and everything he does is his own design. He's truly a legend in the sport.
He is on the cutting edge, and another great thing that we're going to bring out tonight is it's a family affair with the Arfons.
Oh, very much so. The whole family's involved, and I think that's what makes them great.
Art, are you ready? Art's ready. We hope you are, too. Art Arfons, the man behind the monster, is brought to you by Budweiser. This Bud's for you. Another arena, another weekend, another crowd coming to life, cheering for a man and his machine about to perform theatrics on a dirt track somewhere in the United States. Maybe it's Cincinnati, or Richmond, or Houston, the Pontiac Silverdome, or the arena in St. Louis. Whatever the venue, the result is usually the same. This somewhat frail-looking 63-year-old gentleman, who doesn't look like he belongs, straps on his helmet, turns on his engine, and prepares to compete with men half his age. It's time for Art Arfons and his Green Monster tractor to see if they can pull a weighted sled faster and further than those who come before them. The sellout crowd grows restless with anticipation and excitement, anxiously awaiting one of the most fiery shows in all of motorsport.
There's a lot of tension, and gets the old adrenaline going. And after work, it's just like working an 8-hour day. Just one pull will wear you right down. But this is anxiety. You just get keyed up. You want to really go out there and do it. Everybody comes here with the secret thought they're going to walk off with first place.
Akron, Ohio is home. He's in business tonight in Pontiac.
He is really on the line. He's going to have to really hide hard. Look out. Art Arfons can maybe do it again. Oh, man. Oh, man. Art Arfons. Here's a man that's going to do it. I don't think there's any stopping him. Look out. He's going for the goal. He's outside. He's outside. A full pull. I don't think it can be done.
He's got it. He has got it. He's in the pull-off with a flare.
I've always stayed in one of the top 5 spots, and a couple of years I've been right up there at number 1 and 2 all the time. And now the competition is getting a little ahead of me, and it's time for me to build another tractor, but, you know, I've given that a lot of thought. I don't know whether I really want to put that much work into it yet at this age.
At his age, Art Arfons has accomplished more than virtually anyone who's climbed behind the wheel of a souped-up racing machine. It's a legacy which runs from truck pulling to drag racing to land speed record attempts approaching 600 miles an hour. A legacy which now includes 2 family members. 23-year-old daughter, Dusty Arfons, the unofficial queen of the truck pulling circuit. She goes by the name Dragon Lady, driving her father's old tractor. And the man who sits on top of this turbine-powered rocket, 33-year-old Turbo Tim Arfons, whose stunts and theatrics on board this high-powered machine have made him a crowd favorite. While Dusty and Tim have carved out successful careers in the bizarre world of indoor motorsports, both admit they can't compare with that legend, whom they fondly call Dad.
Well, I think he's the greatest that there ever was in this sport, and a lot of sports, drag racing, tractor pulling, land speed record racing. I can't see anybody in the next 10 years even coming close to accomplishing what he has.
In drag racing, this man spent more than 20 years rewriting the record books. And even though he retired from dragging in the early 70s, several of his many records still stand. The Arfons legend was further enhanced when Art shattered existing world land speed records back in the early 1960s. 3 times he left his mark at the Salt Flats in Bonneville. And now, more than 20 years after those momentous times, he's doing the same throughout arenas and stadiums everywhere.
Oh, I've got a lot of fans, a lot of good fans that remember me from clear back. And the greatest thing is to find some old guy come up and say, when I was a kid that big, my dad took me to see you. And then I think how old I'm getting. We was at a car show in New York, and a woman come by and wanted to meet the guy that drove 576 on the Salt. And I said, that's me. She said, no, that's not you. And I said, yeah, it's me. She said, no, you're normal. It's not you. I don't know what she's looking for, a trained ape or something. But she walked away mad because it wasn't me. I think like that tickle me.
He's done so much for the sport. I mean, you go all over the country, and if Art don't show up, people ask you, where's Art? Have you seen Art? You know, Art's a great competitor.
I don't know anyone that can take 2 jet engines that should be in a fighter jet and hook them up and make them work to a couple of rubber tires. Now, he's turned these tires and speeds of excess of 150 miles an hour. I think he was the first guy to really go out there and turn a real fast tire speed. They've kind of changed the tractor pulling industry because of that.
He's definitely the leader in pulling, I think. He's a gentleman. He's sharp. He doesn't run his tractor probably as hard as he has to, only enough to be competitive and win. I think he's been kind of sandbagging on us for years. He probably could have blew us away 5-10 years ago if he really wanted to.
Art Arfons and his Green Monster have blown away a lot of the competition over the past 5 years. And now, our Mike Galloway is with the man and machine for a simplified look at this monster that's a mechanical marvel.
Well, the Green Monster pulling tractor is a very technical piece of machinery. Art, maybe you could kind of simplify it just a little bit so someone like I could understand it.
Okay, Mike, if you promise not to build one.
Well, I wouldn't build one, and I sure wouldn't drive one of them. Now, how does this all work?
Well, this is a 14-stage compressor engine. We take air in the front, the intake, and as it comes back, we add fuel, and we build up pressure, and we go past the power wheel, which runs all the way through the hollow compressor to a gearbox. This transfer box moves the power to a drive shaft right in dead center here, and that goes right to the rear end, and there's no transmission. It's a direct drive.
You talked about fuel going into it. What kind of fuel does this run on?
Well, it usually runs on JP4, jet fuel, and I mix my own. I use K1 kerosene, a little unleaded gas, so it's the right viscosity, and you can buy that anywhere.
How do you know so much about all the jets and the turbines and the J4s and all this stuff? You go to school on that?
No, I bought some engines and tore them down.
And put them back together and they run?
Oh, yeah.
They come from throughout the country, but with a bit of shaping and molding and a lot of ingenuity, these broken and battered engines will soon become the high-powered heartbeat of Art Arfons' many racing machines. Coming up, we'll take a fascinating look at what goes into building these works of art. And we'll also preview this racer's growing obsession to once again become known as the fastest man alive.
My motto is, I can do anything anyone else can do. It just might take me a little longer to do it.
fly when mechanical genius Art Arfons gives birth to yet another motorsports marvel. Over the many years, this man has created more than 25 high-powered vehicles in his cluttered shop in Akron, Ohio. It's a place that's as unpretentious as its owner, a country-like setting far removed from the noise and bustle of Akron's main highways. One which has a simple sign stating, Art Arfons, home of the Green Monster. To Arfons, this graveyard of spare parts and raw power is his home away from home.
When you take some cold, rusted-up piece of junk and it turns into a throbbing perfection that runs and puts out power, you know, it's just like it comes to life. You feel an affection towards him that, you know, I can't explain to anybody, but it's really something. I turned on that.
He had his heart operation back in 79 or 80. He had a triple heart bypass, and they told him he'd have to walk so many miles a day. He got out and walked down to Randy's house, and we had to call for a ride home because he couldn't make it back, and it's only about a half a mile. But he can walk miles to here.
Pain has a way of disappearing when it's a labor of love. And around here, Art Arfons never tires of spending sun-up to sundown days, roaming the many nooks and crannies of his mechanical laboratory. Everywhere you look, there are old parts of engines, nuts, and bolts, and screws, which come from who knows where. But someday, somehow, we'll end up inside the guts of this man's latest creation. How they got here is a fascinating story. Many have come from junkyards and salvage dumps all over the country. You see, to Art Arfons, the old saying rings true. One man's trash is really another man's treasure.
Yeah, this is a basic tank. It's armor-plated. It's the same similar chassis as the M4 high-speed tractor chassis that you guys are using for construction vehicles.
A tank used in Vietnam 20 years ago. Tires which are bare and bald and looking for a home. Jeeps which have been collecting more rust than miles. It's at salvage yards like this that one of the most famous names in motorsports does his shopping. Many of these machines would cost millions of dollars brand new, but they've outlived their original purpose and now await someone like Arfons to buy them for a bargain and bring them to life.
We can't afford to buy up-to-date engines. All the engines we got, the majority of them are 30 years old and 25 years old. And when they're discarded in crash burn jobs, we look for salvage yards and buy them and bring them home and repair them.
I got to stop and get my fire suit and my helmet and everything else before we go up there.
At the Arfons, Ohio shop, restoring and repairing old junkers is truly a family effort. For instance, Tim and his helper, Brett Leroy, have plans to take this Continental J402 cruise missile motor and one day put it inside a high-powered boat. The ongoing process of building and repairing these many engines never ends. It's done by hand, without the use of technical manuals or directions. I mean, after all, only a mechanical genius could rebuild a bullet-riddled helicopter engine from Vietnam and make it move a monster. Someday, awesome fighter jet engines like these, with their 29,000 pounds of thrust, may end up propelling Arfons to new motorsport heights. But for now, they stand idle, waiting for their master to have the need for such a substantial amount of power and speed. Power and speed, two words which have propelled Arfons to fame and glory over the many years. You're looking at a video from the early 1960s when this man blasted his way into the record books 3 times by breaking the world land speed record. In 1964, Art Arfons and his Green Monster traveled 434 miles an hour, faster than any man alive at that point. But while that record was soon broken, this man's competitive spirit wasn't. And in 1965, he put his name in the annals of racing history twice, eventually tearing through the salt flats of Bonneville at an incredible 576 miles an hour.
You can't compare land speed racing to any other kind of tractor pulling or drag racing or anything I've ever done. It's just a special thing that it's hard to explain. It's something that very few people do. You count them on 2 hands that have held land speed records.
In 1966, Art Arfons once again flirted with the land speed record. But this time, disaster struck. struck. A blown tire caused the car to roll out of control. And while Arfons wasn't hurt badly, these blood-stained goggles serve as a chilling reminder of his brush with danger, with high speeds and high risks.
It's an obsession. Something I can't get rid of. It's something I got to do.
An obsession. Something he has to do. The purpose of those statements is this: a uniquely shaped car which looks like a Titan missile. A vehicle Arfons has been building by hand in Akron for the past 4.5 years. And in just a few months, this 63-year-old competitor will strap himself inside this cockpit and attempt to once again reclaim his past glory. Will once again attempt to break the current land speed record of 633 miles an hour. It was set by Richard Noble of England back in 1983. And if Arfons reaches his goal, an incredible 700 miles an hour, he will not only become the fastest man alive, but will also become the only man in history to claim that title 4 times. All of this in a vehicle which will have only 2 wheels touching the ground.
I talked to Tom Green about 20 years ago, and he said really the truest way to go fast would be on a 2 wheels, and I kept thinking about that and dreaming about it, and about 4 years ago I started building this. And it's really, when you stop to think about it, you don't have ground effect to worry about. You've only got 3 inches on the ground, and that's your width of your tire. So I think this is really the way to go fast.
The hours roll by as Arfons and part-time helper Randy Newell work to prepare and perfect their creation. Arfons says it will be able to accelerate from 0 to 600 in less than 20 seconds. But mechanics and physics aside, it more importantly will be carrying a motorsports hero, a legend, who's willing to risk his life to satisfy his obsession. An unending quest to once again be known as the fastest man alive.
Being old is not good, you know. Your reflexes are down and your eyesight's not as good, but everything's going to work out. No problem.
Coming up, we'll go on the road with Art Arfons and take a behind-the-scenes look as he pursues victory at one of the most competitive truck pulls of the year. Another show, and in just a couple of minutes, Mike Galloway and I will begin broadcasting yet another truck and tractor pull. But Mike, we've got the easy job.
Well, that's right, Ken. Basically, we show up a few hours before the event, get comfortable, and describe the action in front of us.
But for the competitors, it's far different. To get to a night like tonight, preparation begins days, sometimes even weeks before they get here. What's it like? Pack a suitcase. We're going to go on the road with the Green Monster and Art Arfons. It's time to hit the road. A quick kiss from wife June signals the beginning of another journey. This time, it's Detroit's Pontiac Silverdome. Life on the road with Art Arfons is a story of long hours and lonely highways. 60 to 80 times a year, Arfons sits behind the wheel of his big tractor trailer and heads off to do battle. His constant companion is daughter Dusty, who always performs at the same show as her dad. And joining the Arfons for this trip is Dusty's good friend, Gino Wachter. And for the next 6 hours, the 3 travelers will make themselves at home in this converted rig, adding even more miles to the nearly 70,000 they ride each year. Like everything else he owns, Arfons built this motorhome from scratch, ingeniously converting parts and pieces from an old school bus and freight trailer. But the comforts of home don't replace the thoughts of competition. And with the Silverdome just a couple of miles away, it's time to prepare for what lies ahead.
This is going to be one of our toughest pulls because they have brought in some real tough tractors from other groups. And the guys I've been pulling with time and time again, I know how they're pulling and I can sort of tell what they're going to do. But about 3 of these new guys coming in, they're going to be real tough to diagnose.
Whoa! What a run! Unbelievable!
Tonight, the competition is fierce. Some of the young new pullers Arfons was worried about are putting on a strong show for the 40,000 fans. But despite a gallant effort, the Dragon Lady is quickly eliminated. Not only that, but poor track conditions promise to make her father's task even more difficult. Yet he doesn't seem worried. With helmet in place and years of experience to draw upon, Arfons and his green monster seem ready for the challenge.
I've seen this before. The left motor's lit. I don't think the right motor ever fired. The right motor may have never fired. Arfons in the air. He's got ground speed. Yes, it is lit. He's going to go out.
Despite a difficult ride, the green monster pulls the 40,000-pound sled almost out the door. A full pull puts Arfons in the finals.
First 50 feet, I was worried it wasn't hooking. When the front end come up, I hooked, and I had a good pull. You didn't run over here. Say that again. I said when the front end come up, I knew I had a hook to the track, and I went ahead and added power, and she went.
Are you going to win?
I'm going to try like hell.
It's got to be one of the best. It is the best indoor tractor pull that I've seen for tractors. Really? Yeah, a lot of guys that don't pull with this organization are here from other organizations, Angler and Banner. It's a real top-notch competition.
But the strong competition has taken its toll. You see, during Arfons' last pull, a bolt holding the gearbox together apparently shook free. With first-place money on the line, the tension builds as this tightly knit family rallies to repair that broken motor.
Hey, Brett, run down and see if somebody's got a piece of tape of any kind just to lay over the thread.
It's like a chain link with a pin. You got a bolt, and you got two pieces of steel with pins going clear through them.
The minutes seem like hours, but finally the damaged bolt is repaired. It took a little tape and a lot of prayers, but Art Arfons is towed to the starting line. At stake, a share of first place and the challenge of winning.
Now they're both in good shape, and here comes Art Arfons. Whoa, what a run! Unbelievable!
Incredibly, it worked. The prayers are answered. The tape held together just long enough. And as this first-place finisher and his broken-down tractor are towed out of the stadium, victory is theirs. For Art Arfons, it all means another successful weekend on the road. A cause for celebration before heading home late at night. And best of all, the thought that another weekend of truck pulling, of new competitive challenges, is just around the corner.
Well, let's see, Art, you're 63. I understand you got to be, you're booked into certain arenas in the year 2000. Is that true?
I don't believe that's true.
Wouldn't mind it, though, would you?
Oh, that'd be a big responsibility to stay that far ahead. My daughter keeps my bookings for me.
I wouldn't bet against it, though, would you, Mike?
Oh, I wouldn't either. What's the next big thing for Art Arfons?
Oh, Mike, we know that's sort of top secret, isn't it?
That really is.
Art Arfons, always on the cutting edge and one of the great legends in this sport. For my partner, Mike Galloway, and for the legend, I'm Ken Broo. Thanks for watching, and so long, everybody.
Art Arfons, the man behind the monster, has been brought to you by Budweiser. This Bud's for you.